Hey, it's Jessica DaMassa with WTF Health. What's the future health? I'm talking to the who's who of health tech and healthcare innovation here at Health 2022. And joining me right now, I have Stephanie Davis. She's Senior Managing Director at SVB Securities. Stephanie, it's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Jess.
Okay, I am so excited to talk to you because you have this reputation for being like the deal maker behind the deal maker behind the deal maker. So I want to pick your brain about all things. And you research and cover healthcare in a really broad way. I mean, all along the health innovation ecosystem, like health IT, digital health, everything, provider, payer, pharma, everything. So where I want to start is at the tippity top here. What's going on this year for you? Like what's so different this year? I mean, talk to me with the way you're looking at the tone has obviously changed. How has it changed?
Everything is different this year, right? I think if last year was euphoria, we've made it, digital health is relevant. This year it's a little bit more panic. A little bit more, are we okay? Is this a future? How are we going to handle things? I would say the number one difference I'm seeing this year is that it's a lot more advice that I'm being asked. Okay. There's a lot of companies coming over and saying, Stephanie, talk to me, where are we on strategy? Where are we on the market? They're looking for a credentialed person, someone in research to say, hey, it's going to be okay. This isn't going to go away forever. There is definitely a fear that we are going to be in a bust cycle after a boom cycle, and I've just been reassuring folks, look, we are in healthcare. It is a very resilient area of the market, so don't worry.
Okay, good. Stephanie says, don't worry, people, don't worry. No, so I want to get your take on spend, because that's like one of the areas that I think a lot of people are freaking out about, because especially right now we're watching what's happening with the economy writ large, where we're seeing a lot of layoffs out there, a lot of concern about employee wellness, employee benefits, health plans, people dialing back. What are you seeing?
I mean, kicking off the conference with 10,000 people getting laid off from Amazon, probably not the best way to kick off the vibe, right? I think folks are a little concerned about that. But look, there are layoffs, and I think a lot of folks have to remember that the IT universe, not just healthcare IT, but all of IT services, is a function of the end market wallet. And so it's a question of which wallet you want to be aligned with. Is it the employer, the payer, the consumer, pharma, the hospitals? And each of these has a bit of an issue, right? Pharma is a very deep wallet, but at the same time, pharma tends to cut early, and they tend to cut on the commercialization side, the sales force and ad spend. That's mostly where the digital health tools are aligned, so they're feeling that very deeply. Yeah. Go over to the payer and the employer end markets, well, employers are cutting headcount, and I think they've both been pitched to death, right?
Point solutioned out and pitched out?
Oh God, yeah. Like you said before, they want naps, not apps, right? They're looking for a time to go home. And so that's not really the best wallet to be pitching to anymore. And so I think that leaves more of the providers that are kind of ironically the safest place to be, even though the hospital is usually a more troubled area of the market.
Yeah, we've been hearing that, especially this last year through the tail end of like the I would say the waning of the pandemic, right? Is that the hospital is suffering? Is that what you've been hearing too, or are they starting to reveal their resilience, which was always actually really there?
Well, they're suffering, but how long has the hospital model been around, right? It's still here. It's not going anywhere. I think also you've seen an expansion of the C-suite. You originally had this question maybe 5 years ago when health first kicked off, who's going to do all of this? The CIO? Well, no. Now we see the CIO, the CTO, there's a chief digital health officer, a chief data strategy officer. For those folks to be justifying their jobs, they're probably doing something in health tech, and that says spend could be happening.
Okay, so is there any particular part of the market that you're very optimistic about, where you're seeing spend still happening the same way we were seeing it in the boom days of the pandemic?
I think patient engagement tools are still more important. Yes, more important than ever.
When you say patient engagement tools, you mean like digital front door stuff or what?
Digital front door, reaching the patient, being able to ping them via text message or email or phone or however they best like it. That's so much more important than it was before, because I think as much as hospitals are stressed, they're also seeing Amazon buy one medical, and they're thinking, what does that mean for me? Maybe I have to go and engage my patient more like a consumer. Okay.
I saw Amazon launched Amazon Clinic too while we were here. I don't know if you saw that, which is going to be very interesting. So while we're talking about the big retailers, how are you seeing the quote unquote pressure that they're putting into the health tech or even just the healthcare space in general. How are you reading that? Like, what's like your take on that? I mean, Amazon, obviously, Walmart, CVS Health, those retail health companies that are starting to really build expansive into the home empires and really leaning hard into virtual first care. I'm like, what are you seeing in that space?
Well, I actually found this interesting. So go to health a few years back. Who are the disruptors? Google, Amazon, Apple, right? All these like splashy tech companies. This year, we're welcoming HCA to the stage, Walgreens, CVS, really kind of the healthcare incumbents. And it makes sense. Those are the ones that have long-term invested in healthcare. They have dollars to spend, which is something that we don't always have over here in healthcare tech. And they are showing an interest in the longer-term evolution of healthcare. And I mean, there's a reason I cover the sector. I think this is the future of healthcare.
What about mental health? What are you seeing there? I mean, that boomed during the pandemic. Is there still the enthusiasm for that?
Absolutely.
You think so?
There's less spend in the employer end market, right? I think they're cutting back. They're looking at all these different PM solutions and they're rationalizing it. But the areas of spend that are still there, women's health, mental health, and musculoskeletal MSK.
Oh, yeah, that's a big space.
But think about it. I mean, what happened when you were during the pandemic? You probably thought about your fertility. I thought about that. You probably thought about your mental health, or you didn't, and you drank a lot, and now you have to go and think about your mental health. And you probably worked at your home office and your back hurt.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah. That's true. So they're spending money on
too much about my home.
No, I mean, I'm kind of like, yeah, I'm all right there. I'm right there. We had a similar pandemic experience, maybe. No, but I think that's interesting. So there's still spend there. Where are you not seeing any spend? Where things are just dialed back as far as you're concerned?
All of the nice to haves. This makes your life easier because we can do fancy concierge care medicine, or we can do a concierge clinic that's closer to your home or the office. I just think the dollars make it very difficult for an employer to justify that.
Okay. On the plan or on the, speak to the plan side, the pharma side, and the provider side on that. Is there anywhere there that you're seeing people kind of pull back?
Everywhere.
Everywhere. Oh no.
Everywhere. I mean, on the ad side, on the nice to have side, for the plans, I think they may be holding back a little bit because valuations are getting cheaper on the private side of the market. It could make sense for the plans to start acquiring rather than partnering.
Okay.
Chronic condition management is interesting, but I think it's yet to be proven out entirely, and there's a lot of nervousness about the future of it, especially given the cost.
You mentioned acquisition, so I want to ask you about that because I bet you get asked a lot about what to do. Like, oh God, Stephanie, what should we do? There were a lot of companies that were poised to go public and get their exit this year, and then everything just changed, kind of like on a dime. So what are people asking you about that?
Well, this is where we get to my favorite buzzword of this conference.
Okay, what is?
Creative destruction.
Ooh, what's creative destruction, Stephanie?
Well, it's the idea as an industry evolves, there is some survival of the fittest,
okay.
Right? That's the nicest way to put it. I mean, there's going to be some evolution, there's going to be some chaos, and there's going to be some companies that don't make it. And that's a natural part of the process.
Okay.
So I think as we're looking at what to do, there are companies that cannot go public right now because of the state of the market. There is still always going to be a place for them, right? I think you've seen funding happen over this conference, right? Some of the women's health companies like Maven, they were able to do a raise. There's still very high quality businesses out there. And there are other businesses that are going to get bought. And there are other businesses that are maybe not going to make it.
Yeah. Buzzword that you are most tired of? I'll tell you mine, omnichannel. I'm so over omnichannel already. I'm like, we're like a year in on omnichannel and I'm done. How about you?
You're right. You're like, omnichannel, that's how I live my life already. I'm pretty done with this. I hate to say it because, I do really believe in the future of it, but value-based care. We've been talking about, but it's what we've been talking about this for a decade. It's been a decade. I still haven't seen it at scale. Have you?
No.
Yeah. So.
Is there one area of healthcare do you think that value-based care is scalable in?
A lot of the problem of value-based care is the most expensive patients are folks like my dad, and they are going to have a chronic condition on top of another chronic condition on top of another chronic condition. And value-based care is just going to be a very difficult prospect for him because these are things that are longer term, they're not going to change, and they're not capitated, right? When I look at women's health, I actually see a lot of opportunity there. right? Things like gestational diabetes feels like very episodic in nature, and you could do that. I know women's health is so much broader than fertility, but that is also episodic in nature, right? There's a lot of opportunities there.
I feel like the definition of women's health is starting to expand. Are you getting a vibe on that? And I'm asking you because bringing up maybe and then talking about women's health being the area where you actually see value-based care working, which is kind of a shocking statement. I love that though, Stephanie.
Well, it is 50% of the population, like a little more than that. So I feel like the idea of women's health being just having babies is kind of a crazy concept, right?
You're leaving out an entire, like the other half of a woman's life.
And the majority of the spend that happens in the health system is from women. So it just feels crazy not to involve it. No, I mean, I think the health system historically has been built by folks that didn't look like us, right? It was built for folks that didn't look like us, and I think having customized solutions that serve half of the population, that's a pretty big chronic condition to have.
I like that. All right, leave us with parting thoughts here. What are we going to be talking about in 2023? If we're all sitting around at JP Morgan, what's everybody going to be talking about?
I will be there hiding outside of the West End.
Like everybody
in the rain, probably in the rain.
Always in the rain.
Always. No, 2023, I think we'll be talking about strategy. There's a lot of pivots that a lot of folks are going to go for, and I think it's actually for a healthier move, right? When you have free-flowing dollars, you can kind of shoot as many arrows and see what hits the mark and what doesn't and kind of wash your hands of that. When you're in a more pressured environment, you have to really choose where you're going to be the most successful and hone in your ideas there, and those are the most successful strategies, right? Like that's where success is bred.
All right, so the pressure cooker, we're going to be in it, and we're going to see what happens. We're going to make some diamonds out of lumps of coal. I don't know.
JP Morgan pressure cooker, I'm ready for it.
Yeah, in the rain. That's funny. There was some year where somebody had mentioned that they could correlate what kind of funding year it was going to be, whether or not there was rain at JP Morgan. This is like if the groundhog sees its shadow. Have you heard this?
This is a causation correlation thing. As a math major, I don't know if I feel comfortable with that.
I love it. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for joining me and for sharing your insights. You have such a broad and expansive view of what's going on and from such a different place, and I really do appreciate that math major perspective, especially when it comes to talking about how the spend is starting to change and how the tone is changing and the questions that you're being asked from the startups are changing as well. So thank you so much for sharing your insight.
Thank you for having me in the program.
All right. Well, we will talk to Stephanie again sometime, maybe at JP Morgan. We'll get her in the rain. I'm Jessica DaMassa, and for more interviews with the who's who of health tech as they are changing the way that we do healthcare, head on over to my YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/WTF Health. Talk to you guys real soon. Thanks.